The feminine, the war, and what follows. When the battlefield becomes sacred. A mystical reading. Open Parashat Tetze and you're immediately hit with the blinding dust and brutal noise of combat. When you go out to war against your enemies, says the first verse. But through the slaughtered cracks, a startling truth appears. Almost immediately the trumpets fades, the swords are lowered, and the battlefield is suddenly populated entirely by women. The beautiful captive, the childless widow, the virgin, the bride, the mother, the hated wife. For centuries, traditional readings have treated these passages like cold domestic laws. They missed the secret. They overlooked what lies beneath. It takes a rare kind of bravery for women seeking the reflection and for men secure enough to face the raw power of the feminine, to realize the brilliance of the text, claiming under a veil of secrecy that the war never actually ended. It simply shifted into the feminine arena. The hidden code of the battlefield. Though the verse that deals with women seem completely disconnected from the physical battlefield, as they immediately retreat from the violence into defining structural laws that establish what is permitted and forbidden, who is accused, who is guilty, who is punished, and who is released, they are where the true heart of the portion lies, and the Zohar knows it. In its mystical commentary on Tetze, the Zohar refuses to skip over these women. Instead, it sends us to examine nearly every extended aspect of them, as a concept, as a source, as a formative cosmic matter. And then it sends them forth, or projects them, queen, maid, servant, mother, the soul itself, through the entire spectrum of holiness. This is not random. There is a hidden feminine code within war itself. Not the physical war of men, where blood is spilled on dirt. War in its deepest spiritual dimension contains femininity as a force that cannot be ignored. In her very essence, the woman represents the cosmic polarity without which war cannot exist, and without which it can never be resolved. Femininity when the legal becomes metaphysical. Beneath the rigid legal facade of social order, the Zohar hears a completely different tune. Whenever the biblical text speaks about a woman, the mystics hear an echo from another world, a different voice. The woman ceases to be merely a physical body or a social category and moves far beyond what the human eye can see, as she becomes a symbol of something greater. In Jewish mysticism, and specifically in the Zohar, femininity is translated or pressed into a language that lifts the veil off the most elusive secrets of reality. A woman can be the vulnerable soul, the running doe, Ayala, the sacred bride, the Shekhinah, the Shabbat, Knesset Israel, or even the hidden moon. This does not mean that the woman disappears into a metaphor. Quite the opposite. Femininity in Jewish mysticism is elevated to a status of absolute sacredness, a striking, beautiful contrast to the chauvinistic lens people have come to expect from ancient religion. If only the world knew how deeply the feminine is considered holy in these hidden realms. Something remarkable happens every time a Kabbalistic text reaches a woman. The physical human identity falls away, a cosmic archetype emerges, and the female figure becomes the vessel through which the text speaks about what it is otherwise impossible to see. The sacred garments of Esther. We see this radical shift clearly in the Zohar's discussion of Motzi Shem Ra, the law concerning a husband who brings a false, slanderous charge against his new wife. While the literal law addresses a local domestic crime, the Zohar immediately widened the scale and broadened the scope. Not all slander is equal, it tells us. The spies who spoke badly of the land of Israel were punished because of what they said about the land. But there is another kind of slander, speech directed against the Shekhinah herself. The Zohar then brings Esther into the discussion. How, it asks, could anyone say that Esther was defiled by Achashverosh, when the verse itself says, "And Esther clothed herself in royalty." The Zohar answers is revolutionary, as it says, "The Shekhinah had clothed herself in Esther." Through this subversion, the woman is no longer just the passive object of human accusation. She has become a living vessel of the divine presence, and therefore, to speak falsely about a woman, to damage her reputation, or to violate her purity is no longer a simple human offense. It is an assault on the holiness hidden underneath her skin, on divinity itself. The Zohar is not making a simple moral comparison here. It is changing the entire scale of the text. As a woman becomes land, land becomes a Shekhinah. Esther becomes a garment of the Shekhinah, and the accusation against the woman becomes an accusation against the divine presence itself. The legal text has dissolved, and the metaphysical truth stands bare. The three souls. As the text unfolds, the Zohar does something even more unexpected. It refuses to leave the women as mere static symbol or legal placeholder, or even a living mirror of the divine presence. Instead, it breaches a hidden, deeper territory to explore what a woman is beyond her physical human manifestation. The woman becomes the archetype of the human soul itself. In one of the most extraordinary passages of this section, the Zohar declares, "There is a soul that is a queen, there is a soul that is a maid servant, and there is a soul that is a simple servant." This is a conceptual leap. The woman is no longer just the subject of a biblical law or a living vessel of the divine presence. She has become the very architecture of human consciousness. The Zohar then maps these three distinct female identities onto three different spiritual worlds, tracking the fluid relationship between the spiritual soul and the physical body. By doing so, it gives the soul not one female identity, but several. There is a soul that is matronita, a queen. There is a soul that is an amma, a maidservant. And there is a soul that is a shifra, a simple servant. The hierarchy is not just social, it describes degrees of spiritual consciousness or sacredness. The exact same soul can inhabit these different states of being. Sometimes she rules in majesty as a queen, matronita. Sometimes she is in service, amma. Sometimes she is so deeply entangled and exiled within the body and its lower desires that she is described as a servant to the servant itself, shifra. Out of this complex psychological landscape, the Zohar evokes one of the most haunting verses in the Bible, lifting it completely out of its original context. "And the dove found no resting place for the sole of her foot." Suddenly the bird from Noach's ark is no longer a historical creature navigating ancient floodwater. The dove is the exiled soul, wings outstretched, desperately searching for a place to land within the chaos of human existence. And how poetically appropriate it is that this search happens during a cosmic flood. In the language of the soul, water represents the vast landscape of human emotion. A flood is emotion overflowing in an extreme, uncontrolled manner, a devastating storm of feeling. It is precisely there, trapped above the droning turbulence of the human heart, that the soul flies, terrified and exhausted, looking for solid ground. The hovering mother. At the absolute tail of the Parashat, the Torah introduced yet another female figure, the law of Shiloach HaKen, sending away the mother bird. The text comments, "If you happen upon a bird's nest on the way, with the mother sitting over the young, Once again, the Kabbalistic tradition completely pierces the literal surface. The mother bird is revealed to be the Shekhinah, while her unhatched eggs and fragile chicks represent the different spiritual states of Israel and those who study Torah. The scene is almost unbearably tender. The divine presence is no longer just a distant, unapproachable queen. She is a fiercely protective mother hovering over her nest. She does not wait for her children to grow strong or develop wings capable of flight. She is actively present in their state of absolute incompleteness. This is the definition of the feminine divine, a protective, nurturing presence that bridges the gap when the other is either broken or incomplete. The feminine as holy disturbance. These striking images weave together to form a silent, mysterious current flowing beneath the entire Torah, forcing us to confront a series of penetrating, urgent questions. Why does the Zohar need the language of women to speak about the soul? Why is the soul a queen? Why can she become maidservant? Why is the Shekhinah repeatedly imagined as a woman, a bride, a mother, a daughter, a maiden? Why does Torah itself so often enter the same symbolic field? And why, in the same mystical universe, is Shabbat called queen or a bride? And another interesting question, why does the Torah deliberately choose to insert these intense feminine archetypes into a context of brutal war and social disorder? Why does the feminine force awaken precisely on the battlefield? The answer is as radical as it is unsettling. To the uninitiated, the feminine force appears deceptive, capturing, limiting, or even dangerous. It is a force that breaks conventional structures. Femininity is a power that has the ability to establish or shape a kind of disturbance. In truth, femininity is the ultimate cosmic disturbance, but it is a disturbance in the form of absolute holiness. Creation itself exists in a state of constant holy friction. The war between the forces of purity and impurity never rests. It is important to understand here the woman does not necessarily represent impurity always. Rather, she represents the catalytic element that throws reality out of its safe, stagnant balance. In a state of war, when the rigid boundaries of good and evil are drawn and reality seems orderly, when there is a clear objective and agreed upon enemies, when reality seemingly disturbed is organized and ordered in the consciousness of good and evil, there the woman appears. She is a disturbance upon a disturbance. Women are the greatest force of holiness, but also can be its greatest enemy. And the Zohar understands this deeply. When it speaks of femininity in the context of war, it is not discussing biological woman. It is discussing a profound degree of creation of everything that receives, establishes, shapes and holds power. And so the feminine enters the battlefield not as combatant, but as the force that unmakes every certainty. When she arrives, she is not there to fight, but to dissolve. The collapse of the hierarchy. When the alarms of war sound, every feminine frequency in the universe begins to vibrate. Esther, hidden chamber, the Shekhinah, the Shabbat bird, and the mother bird, the Shabbat bride, and the mother bird are all violently shaken. All the feminine forces of creation stir when Israel goes out to war. Why? Because war introduces a profound spiritual paradox. Externally, it imposes a rigid artificial order of battle lines and defined enemies, but internally, it shatters the cosmic hierarchy. War is the precise moment when the predictable, structured pathway of the universe collapses and the hierarchical order breaks. While higher forces always flow downwards and lower forces climb upward in ordinary times, war accelerates this flow into a violent, chaotic torrent. It is a rupture in reality, a tremor that breaks the world open. Boundaries dissolve completely. Darkness pours in. Blood, the soul, is spilled upon the earth, the feminine. In the boldest and most terrifying imagery of the text, the Shekhinah herself drinks the blood of her falling children, absorbing their shattered life force back into herself. Femininity is the disturbance itself. It is the aspect of change within stasis. It is the raw energy required for liberation, dissolution, and ultimate assembly. This is the true essence of feminine labor. It is the painful, messy work of nursing, caring, maintaining continuity, and creating new states of being out of total chaos. In Jewish mysticism, the woman is an active architect of reality, simultaneously the creator and the created. War is simply the terrifying crucible where Israel is forced to engage this cosmic force face to face, not by plotting, but in combat itself. And to conclude, all of this is why the Zohar cannot speak of God or the soul without the language of women. When the war finally ends and the smoke clears from the battlefield, the feminine force does not vanish, it transforms. The woman becomes Malka, the queen who gathered the scattered pieces. She becomes Kala, the bride seeking a holy union after total devastation. She is the Shekhinah, refusing to abandon her children, choosing to dwell even in the most shattered and defiled human places. And she is your own soul, the eternal dove, flying through the dark endlessly, searching for a place to rest.